My family banned me from the reunion, so I let them walk into the beach house I secretly owned. They didn't say my name not once, not even by accident. The email was sent on a Tuesday morning, cheerful in tone, pretending warmth it didn't carry. Subject line: Donnelly Family Reunion. Summer 2025. It was signed off by Lauren, my sister, like always. RSVP by Friday. Accommodations covered. Family traditions continued. I read it 3 times slower with each pass, hoping my eyes had missed a line, a sentence, a clause where someone remembered I existed. But no. The guest list was built into the body. Brandon and his fiancée Aunt Ruth and Uncle Miles. Lauren and David with the twins. Even Mom, who hadn't taken a plane in 3 years. But nowhere, not in the main paragraph, or the forwarded thread below, was there any mention of Katie. Not even a typo. My full name is Catherine Donnelly. I'm 34, based in Charleston, South Carolina, and I design guest experience systems for a boutique hotel group across the southeast coast. It's quiet work, but it matters. Every little choice I make shapes the way someone feels when they walk into a space meant to hold memory. Which is maybe why that email didn't just sting, it shook something deeper. Because I used to be part of that family space. The planning, the checklists, the games on the beach, the grocery runs before the big crab boil. Years ago, I even helped restore the family house after a hurricane clipped it. That summer, I pulled together quotes from contractors, researched tile samples, stayed up on the porch, repainting shutters, while Lauren floated around showing swatches of napkins for themed dinners. I was the one who got the original fireplace fixed and found a box of our grandmother's postcards behind the closet wall. And now, 10 years later, I was being erased without discussion. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing with being excluded. It's not loud, not dramatic. It's silent, polite, like an empty chair no one mentions. The first few years I still got CC'd on planning threads. Then it was just an FYI email here and there. Then nothing. I thought I was imagining it at first. After all, I was busy with work. I moved around a lot. I didn't have kids, didn't host game nights, didn't call Mom every Thursday like Lauren did. So I gave them reasons to believe I distanced myself. But there's a difference between being distant and being dismissed. I sent birthday gifts, showed up at the hospital when Dad's knee went bad, wired money when Brandon's tuition deadline snuck up. But those things never made it into group stories. The photos they posted on Facebook had all the Donnellys standing on that wraparound porch in white linen, grinning against the Atlantic wind. All except me. The last time I called Mom to ask about the reunion 2 years ago, she sounded distracted, said Lauren was handling things, and maybe it was best I skipped it, since the sleeping arrangements were tight. I remember looking around my apartment after that call. Spacious, organized, decorated with calm tones and functional art. I'd made a life. It just didn't fit their narrative. They liked loud, matching, picture-ready memories. I was the background, the quiet one who showed up early to prep the table but never made it into the stories afterward. I didn't respond to the email. I just closed it and stared out the window of my office, where sunlight hit the corner of the desk at just the right angle to light up a framed photo of Dad and me from a beach trip when I was 9. We were building something in the sand, I don't even remember what. But I do remember him saying something I wrote down later in my sketchbook: if they try to crowd you out, build space of your own. I hadn't thought about that sentence in years, but it found me again like driftwood, washing back ashore. So, I did what I always do when I need to breathe. I opened a new tab and typed the address of the beach house. I wasn't expecting anything, just curiosity, just closure. And then there it was. A small listing buried in a real estate site. No fanfare, no family group chat about options, no forwarded message from Mom with a subject line like next chapter. Just a quiet posting: private sale, waterfront home, limited listings, motivated seller. My heart stilled. I clicked. The house was up for sale. The place where I learned to swim. The place where my dad and I fixed the attic fan and discovered a dead raccoon together. The place they planned to reunite in again this summer. It was being sold. Without a single word to me. That was the moment something shifted. I didn't know what I would do yet. I didn't feel rage or sadness, not then, just clarity. A kind of still sharp recognition that I didn't need to ask them for space anymore, because they had just handed me a door. I hadn't seen the inside of the house in nearly 4 years, not since Dad's memorial. That weekend still lived in fragments, rain hitting the windows hard, casseroles dropped off by people I barely knew, and Lauren flipping through old photo albums as if memory were a story she alone got to write. I stayed silent back then, helped Mom coordinate logistics, kept a polite distance from the drama. I slept on the downstairs couch because no one had thought to assign me a room. Lauren and David took the master suite without asking. I remember brushing my teeth in the tiny half bath off the kitchen and realizing I hadn't been included in the room chart Lauren had color-coded and pinned to the fridge. When I asked about it, she just laughed and said, "Oh, I figured you'd find a spot. You're flexible like that." And like a fool, I nodded. That was the last time I stayed there. Since then, the house had remained a photo backdrop. A place they tagged each other in on social media, while I watched from a quiet corner of my apartment pretending I didn't care. But seeing the listing live, buried, unannounced, marked as seller flexible, did something different. It stripped away the last benefit of the doubt I had been giving them. I clicked through the images. They had painted the walls a blander beige, taken down Dad's framed maps of the coast, and replaced the old rattan chairs with newer, shinier furniture that had no story. It looked like any other beach rental. The porch swing was still there, though. Still slightly tilted, still creaking in the wind. I recognized a throw pillow I had stitched the summer after college, hidden now in the corner of a wide shot almost cropped out. That's what I had become to them. An edge of the frame. Not worth deleting entirely, just quietly left out. I made 2 calls that afternoon. The first was to Nina Valdez, a former colleague who had moved into real estate law. She was smart, precise, and had helped my hotel group navigate complicated zoning issues when we expanded into coastal properties. I trusted her. The second call was to Harold Green, Dad's old estate attorney, who had always kept his language simple and his tone kind, even when discussing difficult truths. Neither of them seemed surprised when I explained what I'd found. Nina said she'd start by pulling the property documents and checking the current ownership structure. Harold paused for a moment, then said gently, "Your father left specific instructions regarding that house. I'll pull the original trust and get back to you." The next morning, I got a folder from Nina with everything I needed to confirm what I had suspected but hadn't dared say out loud. The house had been placed into a shell company a year after Dad's death, titled under a limited liability entity registered to a P.O. box in Raleigh. The managing member was Lauren. The paperwork was all technically sound but sloppily handled. Tax filings were delayed. Insurance documents were missing. Nina flagged a key clause, one that most people would have missed unless they knew how trusts could revert in case of default or mismanagement. The clause was simple. If the estate failed to maintain compliance, ownership could revert to the backup beneficiary listed in the original trust. That name in clear typeface was mine. I wasn't angry, not in the way people expect when you say your family has cut you out. I didn't feel fire or revenge. I felt something cleaner, like clarity. This wasn't about taking something from them. It was about reclaiming something that had been mine all along. Something they assumed I would never notice. I took a walk that night down to the pier where I used to watch the cargo ships fade into dusk. I remembered Dad's voice from one of our last real conversations before the stroke had slowed him. We were sitting by the fire pit. He said, "You've got quiet power, Katie. Just make sure they don't confuse it with absence." At the time, I smiled and thought he meant work or relationships. Now I knew he had seen what was coming before any of us did. By Friday, I had the legal documents in place. I hadn't made a final decision, not yet, but I had every right to act. The listing agent didn't recognize my name until I mentioned who I was. Her voice changed immediately. "Oh," she said, "you're the other Donnelly." I told her I'd like to move forward discreetly. No announcements, no public notices. She understood. People who handle family property often do. That weekend, Lauren posted a photo of the porch on Instagram. The caption said, "Can't wait to carry on the tradition. Summer 2025, we're ready." I stared at that post for a long time. There were 114 likes, 13 comments, all the usual affirmations from people who only knew her side, but none of them knew what was already in motion. Because this time I wasn't going to knock. I already had the keys. I signed the paperwork on a Wednesday afternoon while the office downstairs was setting up for a quarterly meeting I had opted out of. My boss thought I was taking a mental health break, and in a way I was. There was something strange about signing a deed to a house I once cleaned out gutters for wearing sneakers and a baseball cap, while Lauren gave orders from the hammock. Back then, I thought my place in the family would always be small but safe, tucked somewhere between support role and afterthought. Signing those documents didn't feel like revenge, it felt like restoration. Not of property, but of perspective. The paperwork was clean as Nina had promised. The trust had been violated through negligence, not malice, though I was starting to believe the two weren't always that different. Lauren had moved fast when Dad died. She filed changes, opened shell accounts, took over maintenance decisions, but she hadn't paid attention to the boring parts: the filings, the insurance, the language of contingency. And that was where it broke open. Nina's notes were meticulous, color-coded, and dated with screenshots and stamps of every missed deadline. She had also looped in a local notary and arranged for a digital copy to be stored off-site. In case anything gets challenged, she said, not with fear but precision. I appreciated that. She never once asked why I wanted the house, only how I planned to use my right to it. The next morning, I reserved the property for a private stay. 3 nights, arrival Friday. Guest name, Miss Catherine Donnelly. I checked the box requesting quiet hours, no cleaning service, and pre-stocked sparkling water. I asked that the master bedroom be prepared with fresh linens and the old rocking chair if it was still in the garage. When the confirmation came through, I didn't smile. I just stared at the email for a full minute, then deleted it. There was nothing to celebrate yet. On social media, Lauren posted a countdown to the reunion. She had made custom tumblers, ordered matching t-shirts, and assigned memory duties to the cousins. In the comment section, someone asked about me. Will Katie be joining this year? Lauren replied, with a laughing emoji, and said, she's always too busy building her empire. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. What was coming didn't require an audience. It just required timing. The night before their arrival, I drove down early. I didn't stay. I just walked the perimeter and checked that everything was in place. The porch light was flickering again, same way it had in 2013 when I fixed it with Dad, one rainy morning while Lauren was inside, trying to reach a planner for her engagement party. The door still stuck slightly on the right, the kitchen drawer still jammed if you pulled it too hard. The house hadn't changed, but I had. I took a slow walk through the hallway, then paused by the window where Dad used to sit and sip his coffee. The light filtered in the same. The shadows were familiar. But there was a lightness in me I hadn't felt in years. Before leaving, I placed the guest registry by the front desk and signed it Miss K. Donnelly. There was a formality to it, a gesture that didn't announce power but confirmed presence. After all, they had erased my name from the invitation, but now I had quietly written it where it couldn't be ignored. I parked 2 blocks away that afternoon in a rental car, with tinted windows and sand already on the floor mats. I didn't plan to make a scene, I just wanted to see them arrive. At 6:47 p.m., Lauren's black SUV pulled in. David got out first, always playing the helpful husband role, lifting bags that weren't his. The twins followed, loud and restless, fighting about who got the top bunk. Then came Mom, wearing her signature white linen and carrying a monogram tote. She hadn't changed much. She moved slower, her shoulders hunched slightly from years of tension she never admitted to, but her expression was the same, a careful combination of composed warmth and selective memory. They walked up to the front desk, with confidence, laughter in their voices, the kind of familiarity that comes from believing the world will bend for you. I watched from the car as the front desk clerk looked up from the computer, then down again, then paused. Her head tilted. She looked back at the screen. Then she said something that made Lauren stop mid-step. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the moment it landed. Lauren's mouth froze open. Mom leaned in, confused. David scratched his head and the kids went quiet. The clerk pointed to the screen again, then toward the registry. There was a long silence, the kind that doesn't fill a room but rearranges it. Lauren stepped forward, said something sharp. The clerk stayed calm. Then I saw her reach into the drawer and pull out the confirmation printout. She pointed to the name on the top. Miss K. Donnelly. It hit them like a whisper that wouldn't go away. And I hadn't even left the car. I stepped out of the car not for effect but because it was time. My shoes met the pavement with quiet finality, each step steady, not rushed, not dramatic. The air smelled like sea salt and evening sunburn the way it always had during late July. I walked toward the entrance, passing the same potted palms we'd placed years ago during one of Dad's freshen-up weekends. The front door was open, their luggage clustered like unspoken assumptions by the reception desk. Lauren turned the second she heard my footsteps. Her expression froze somewhere between offense and disbelief. She was holding her sunglasses in one hand and the keys in the other, as if both could shield her from what was about to unfold. "Excuse me," I said calmly to the young clerk who glanced between us with a flicker of tension. "I believe the reservation is under my name, Catherine Donnelly." She checked the system again unnecessarily but nodded with relief. "Yes, ma'am. Your preferences have all been honored. We've placed your requested items in the suite and reserved the entire property under your name." She didn't say it loudly, but loud wasn't necessary. Lauren heard every word. So did David. So did Mom, who hadn't yet looked me in the eye. Lauren's voice was clipped and defensive, like she was fighting off a rumor too close to the truth. "You bought the house." I nodded. "Legally, through Dad's fallback clause. It reverted when the trust's terms were violated. No drama, just paperwork." She blinked as if trying to read between lines that didn't exist. "Why would you do this?" Mom's voice came softer. The same tone she used when asking where her reading glasses were, or if I still took almond milk in my coffee. But this wasn't about milk, it was about memory. Because I said simply I was never invited, but I was never gone. David stepped forward like he might play mediator, but he didn't say anything. The twins still too young to understand the tension, but old enough to feel it stopped fidgeting. Silence wrapped the room like steam rising from a cooling kettle. No one screamed, no one pleaded. They simply stared, unsure whether I had come to ruin something or reveal it. I pulled out my ID and handed it to the clerk. "Anyone not on my guest list," I said, "should be politely escorted. With kindness, but with clarity." The clerk gave a small nod, stepping into protocol like it was instinct. Lauren didn't move. Neither did Mom. But eventually David picked up one of the bags and turned toward the exit. He didn't look at me, just walked with the quiet obedience of someone raised in Southern manners and lifelong deference to strong personalities. Mom followed behind, her pearls shifting slightly with each step. Only Lauren lingered, her mouth pressed tight, fists clenched but empty. She looked like she wanted to say something clever, something cutting, but no words came. I waited. She didn't speak, so I turned away, not because I was dismissing her, but because the moment no longer belonged to her. That night I stayed in the master suite. I lit a candle that smelled like cedar and citrus and opened all the windows so the breeze could move freely through the rooms. The walls held onto the salt, the way only beach houses do. I walked barefoot through each corner, touching only what felt familiar. The guest room with the faded blue quilt. The hallway where we had lined up in height order every summer for photos. The kitchen drawer with Dad's old bottle opener still jammed in the back. I found a seashell tucked in the windowsill of my old bedroom and smiled without trying to. It had a small crack down one side, like it had been kept without care. But it had survived, like me. The next morning the house was quiet. I made coffee the way Dad used to, black with just a touch of cinnamon. I didn't expect to feel triumphant. I didn't expect closure. What I felt was steadiness. There was no applause, no posts, no comment section to affirm or challenge what I had done, just the hum of the ocean and the house breathing again in my presence. Later that afternoon, Nina texted. "Any fallout?" I replied with 2 words. "All quiet." She sent back a thumbs up and nothing else. She knew better than to overstate victory. But peace, like anything hard-earned, doesn't always last long. Around 4 p.m., a local reporter left a voicemail. Then came another. Then an email subject line, vague but clearly digging. It didn't take long before I saw the headline. "Daughter seizes coastal property from family, via legal loophole." The article cited an anonymous source who claimed I had manipulated my father during his final months, that I had orchestrated the entire transaction for personal gain. There was a quote about cognitive decline. There was speculation about my motives, and though no names were directly mentioned, the fingerprints were unmistakable. Lauren had decided that silence wasn't enough. I read the article once, then a second time slower. The headline was vague enough to invite curiosity but sharp enough to wound. Daughter seizes coastal property from family via legal loophole. The reporter had pieced together fragments of truth and stitched them into something that resembled a scandal. It quoted a close family member who claimed I had taken advantage of my father while he was in decline, that I had manipulated documents and isolated him during his final year. There were mentions of estrangement, questionable timing, and intent to divide the family. They didn't print Lauren's name, but they didn't need to. The voice was unmistakable. She had always known how to sound like the concerned older sister, just trying to hold the family together. She was polished in interviews, practiced in sympathy. She could cry on cue without letting her mascara run. I didn't panic. I didn't call the reporter. I didn't rush to post a statement or draft a legal threat. Instead, I made tea and opened the file Nina had prepared weeks earlier. Inside were transcripts, time-stamped screenshots, and a list of names I had stopped thinking about for years. But what mattered most wasn't text. It was voice, because I had something Lauren didn't know existed. A conversation Dad and I recorded the summer before his stroke, back when he was still sharp and still planning. We'd sat on the porch one evening, just the two of us. I had asked if I could record our talk to capture his memories, his tone, his way of looking at the world. He'd laughed and said I was the only one who cared about the details. The audio was saved on an old drive I kept in a drawer. I never opened unless I needed to remember who I was, before they edited me out. In the recording, Dad spoke slowly but clearly. He talked about the house, about how much it meant to him, about how he hoped it wouldn't become just another photo op. Then, without prompting, he said, "If something happens, I want Katie to have it. Lauren makes things look good, but Katie makes things last." His voice didn't shake. He didn't sound confused. He sounded tired maybe, but focused. And then came the sentence I had never quoted aloud, not even to Nina. "She's the only one who came back when things got quiet. That was it. No legal clause, no formal request, just intent spoken without audience, without performance." I didn't cry listening to it again. I just felt still. I sent the audio to Nina first, who verified the date stamp and flagged the relevance for intent under state law. Then I called Harold Green, who added it to his copy of the estate file. He told me quietly that if the matter escalated, the recording would speak louder than any argument. Still, I hesitated. Not because I doubted the truth, but because I knew what truth cost. Once released, it wouldn't just offend me, it would expose them, and part of me still wondered if that was worth it. I sat with the choice overnight. The next morning I got another text, this time from a former colleague who hadn't spoken to me in 3 years. "Is it true what they're saying?" she wrote. "Did you really push your mom and sister out of your father's will?" That was when I knew it wasn't just a rumor. It was a campaign. So I called the reporter, not the one who wrote the first piece, but one I trusted, someone who had written years ago about elder care and financial abuse with nuance and restraint. I told her I had something to share. No interview, no quote, just files. I sent her the full folder, the trust language, the ownership history, the missed filings, and finally the audio. I wrote only one sentence in the email body. "This is the full story. Decide what matters." Then I closed my laptop and waited. By that afternoon, the original article had been pulled. The link now led to a quiet correction. Editor's note: this story has been updated following new information that clarifies legal ownership and documented intent from the deceased. No apology, no retraction. But the comments stopped. The emails stopped. The texts slowed. Lauren had gone quiet, and silence once again did the work for me. That evening I sat on the porch with a glass of water and watched the tide slide in. The sky went pink, then silver, then dark. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I just breathed. Because they had told the world their version. And now finally the truth had somewhere to stand. The summons came a week later, typed, and folded too neatly inside a cream envelope with my full name spelled out in capital letters. Lauren had filed for an emergency injunction. The claim alleged undue influence, emotional coercion, and manipulation of an aging parent. I wasn't shocked. It was her style, always cloaked in legal language, and concern always framed as protection, never possession. The hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday at the county courthouse. Nina told me to stay calm. Harold sent over a checklist. I didn't need either. I knew this wasn't about legality. It was about memory and which version would be allowed to stand. That morning I dressed in navy. No power red, no soft cream, just the color Dad once called steel-willed blue. I didn't bring an entourage. No publicist, no photographer, no legal team in glossy shoes. Just me, a folder, and one clean sentence repeating in my head. She's the only one who came back when things got quiet. The courtroom smelled like disinfectant and printer ink. The kind of place where words get flattened into evidence and faces stay unreadable. Lauren was already seated when I arrived in an all-white pantsuit and lip color too close to coral. She didn't look at me. Her fingers tapped against her phone with a rhythm I recognized from childhood. Tap, tap, pause. Tap, tap harder. It meant she was anxious but couldn't admit it. Mom sat beside her. Her pearls were slightly crooked hands folded in her lap, eyes flicking between the judge's bench and the floor. I wondered if she remembered the last time I had sat next to her in a courtroom years ago when we fought to keep my cousin Brandon from getting expelled. Back then she held my hand. Now she wouldn't meet my gaze. Their attorney stood and delivered his script. His hair was perfect. His tone was soft but edged with performance. He used words like fragile, vulnerable, estranged. He paused before each one, letting them linger like accusations dressed in sympathy. He said my father had been declining. He said I had isolated him, that the audio recording was out of context, that the trust clause had been twisted by someone hungry for control. I didn't flinch, I just waited. When it was my turn, I stood slowly and walked to the center without fanfare. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at Lauren. I looked straight ahead. Your Honor, I began. I would like to submit video and audio documentation that reflects my father's clear intent regarding this property and his wishes for succession. The judge, an older man with thick glasses and a thin patience, nodded and adjusted his chair. The clerk dimmed the lights slightly. The screen flickered on. I didn't watch the video. I'd memorized every frame. Dad sat on the porch wearing the same sweatshirt he wore every winter. His hands rested on a mug with chipped paint. His voice came through the speakers, steady, firm, unshaken. If anything happens, he said, I want Katie to have this place. Lauren makes things shine. Katie makes them last. He paused. She was the only one who came back when things got quiet. His eyes looked straight ahead like he was talking to someone beyond the camera, or maybe to no one at all. That was the strength of his voice. It didn't need a target. Then came the audio from the speakerphone recording the one Savannah had caught by accident when she answered a call on my mother's behalf. Lauren's voice was unmistakable. She was never really part of this family. She should have been easier to control. There was a silence after that line, as if even the courtroom had exhaled. I didn't look back. I didn't check their faces. The evidence had already done what it needed to do. The judge tapped his pen twice, then looked down at the file in front of him. His ruling was brief. This court finds no evidence of manipulation or undue influence. The trust language is binding. The audio confirms direct intention from the deceased. The petition is denied. He removed his glasses and added, This court does not resolve emotional wounds. It only enforces law. And the law in this case is clear. I nodded once, not to the judge, but to myself. Lauren stood, but said nothing. Her jaw was clenched so tight I could see the strain in her neck. Mom stayed seated. Her breath was shallow. Her hands trembled slightly, but never moved from her lap. I gathered my folder and walked out without turning around. I didn't want to see their faces contorted into confusion or carefully rehearsed disappointment. I knew them already. I had seen them in every family photo I was cropped out of. Outside, the reporters waited. One stepped forward as I hit the top of the courthouse stairs. Do you have anything to say to your family? He asked, microphone outstretched like a fishing line in murky water. I paused. The breeze lifted the edges of my blazer. I looked toward the horizon, then back at him. No, I said. I already said it. I just used quieter words. And then I kept walking, not away from them, but toward the version of myself they never made room for. When I returned to the house that evening, there were no cars out front, no voices bouncing off the wood paneling, no movement behind the salt-frosted windows. The stillness wasn't eerie, it was earned. The kind of quiet that settles after years of explanation when nothing more needs to be said. I stepped inside, locked the door behind me, and paused just long enough to let my eyes adjust to the warmth of late afternoon light pouring in across the floor. Everything felt exactly as I had left it, and yet lighter. Not cleaner, not rearranged, just emptied of tension. The kind of shift that happens when denial leaves a room for good. I didn't rush to unpack. I walked through each space, touching the places memory had imprinted on without asking. The groove on the staircase railing where I once slid down too fast and chipped my elbow. The corner of the hallway where we used to mark our heights with pencil lines, now painted over in a careful beige that tried too hard to forget. In the back office, once Dad's study, I opened the desk drawer that had never quite closed properly. Inside was a mess of forgotten paper clips, a dried-out pen, and a small object wrapped in yellowing tissue. I knew what it was before I unwrapped it. The wind chime. Shells tied with blue thread, each one marked with our initials from a summer craft project so long ago I could barely remember who came up with the idea. Mine was the only shell that hadn't faded completely. I sat on the floor, crossed my legs like I used to at 8 years old, and began untangling the knots one by one. I didn't fix it to display it. I fixed it because some things don't have to be perfect to still belong. I hung it later that evening on the kitchen window hook just above the sink, where the breeze would catch it during morning dishwashing. The sound it made wasn't musical or polished. It was uneven, clunky even. But it was familiar. And I had missed it more than I realized. Around sunset, Savannah arrived. She didn't knock. She never did. She came through the back door, arms full of paper towels and 2 bottles of cheap red wine. "You didn't think I'd let you claim victory without wiping windows, did you?" she said, handing me a rag. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. We got to work cleaning the grime off the upstairs windows, while the wind carried sea air through the hallways. We didn't speak much at first. Some moments don't need narration. We were 2 women scrubbing away more than dust, clearing out years of quiet rejection of moments we let slide, in order to keep the peace. But peace that comes from shrinking yourself isn't peace. It's slow erasure. Later we sat on the porch with glasses in hand, not clinking them, just holding them like anchors. The ocean moved like breath, slow and measured, exhaling centuries of patience. Savannah broke the silence first. "So what now?" she asked, not curious, just offering the space if I wanted to fill it. I stared out at the horizon, where the sky kissed the water in that soft, dissolving way. "They said I left," I said. "That I drifted. But I didn't go anywhere. They just chose not to see me." She nodded and leaned back in her chair, letting the thought settle where it landed. We didn't toast. We didn't celebrate. That wasn't what this was. It wasn't about winning or proving or reclaiming in the loud sense. It was about presence. About standing exactly where they said you didn't belong, and knowing you do. Not because of ownership or court rulings or documents signed in blue ink, but because the foundation remembers who built it. Because even when the pictures are cropped and the emails are forwarded without your name, the echo of your footsteps still lives in the floorboards. That night I turned off the lights room by room, not from a place of caution but care. I didn't rush. I didn't double back. Each switch flipped with intention, like a quiet ceremony. In the hallway I paused by the shelf where Lauren had once placed a fake plant and a stack of magazines. I replaced it with a framed photo. One of Dad and me from the day we fixed the lantern outside. Our clothes were stained with paint. Our hands were dirty. But our smiles were real, tired, in the way that only comes after doing something that mattered. I placed the frame down and stepped back. Not to admire it, but to recognize it. To let it exist again in the space that had tried to forget it. And as I climbed the stairs for the night, I didn't carry the heaviness of what it had taken to get here. I carried only the sound of the wind chime, clinking just once in the kitchen below. Imperfect, unsymmetrical, and entirely enough. The next morning I woke before the sun, not from anxiety or obligation, but from a habit I thought I'd left behind. My body remembered the way mornings felt in this house, long before my mind could catch up. The quiet hush before the waves got loud, the chill in the tile beneath bare feet, the scent of briny air seeping through half-closed windows. I made coffee without turning on the lights, relying only on memory and instinct the way Dad used to. The house didn't need explaining anymore. It knew me again. I carried my mug to the back porch and wrapped a throw around my shoulders, one I had found in the linen closet the night before. It was older than I remembered, the stitching loose at the corners, but it still held the scent of cedar and laundry powder. As the sky shifted from deep gray to soft amber, I watched the tide retreat slowly, leaving streaks of foam in its wake like unfinished sentences. There was a kind of rhythm in that, the coming and going the way water never asks permission to reclaim space. Maybe that's what this whole thing had been, a quiet return that didn't need an announcement. By mid-morning, I had decided to go through the attic. It wasn't about cleaning. It was about facing the pieces they had left behind. Savannah offered to help, but I told her I needed to do this part alone. The attic door groaned as it opened, the same creak it made when I was 12, and used to sneak up there to read in the far corner by the small round window. Dust floated in soft spirals as I climbed, the kind of dust that only exists in places memory has touched, but no one has dared to disturb. Boxes lined the back wall, each one labeled in Lauren's handwriting with bold capital letters. Christmas. Photos. Dad's tools. I opened them one at a time, slow and careful. There were photo albums, most of them filled with pages I already knew, but as I flipped deeper into one marked "Misk," I found a picture I had never seen. It was a candid shot. Dad and I, sitting on the porch, steps my head against his shoulder, both of us holding ice cream cones like it was the most normal thing in the world. No one was posing, no one was performing. Just us, mid-laughter, mid-summer. The date scribbled on the back in Dad's handwriting read August 2009. Porch talk. I held the photo without blinking for what felt like a long time. Not because it made me sad, but because it reminded me that love, real love, doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't rely on captions or matching outfits or curated moments. It just happens, quietly, persistently, like tide against stone. I placed the photo in my back pocket without saying goodbye to the rest. Some things are meant to be carried forward. Others are meant to be left exactly where they were forgotten. Downstairs, I packed away a few boxes to donate, filled with things that had been updated to look good in photos but never touched. Decorative trays, plastic coral monogrammed throw pillows that didn't match the feel of the house. I didn't throw anything out with spite. I just edited. I restored what belonged. There was something therapeutic in that process. Not reclaiming, recentering. Giving breath back to a place that had been held too tight in all the wrong hands. Later in the day, I walked down to the beach with a trash bag and a notebook. I picked up pieces of driftwood, old bottle caps, a pair of sunglasses half buried in the sand. It had always bothered me when people left the shore dirtier than they found it. Dad used to say the way we treat shared spaces reveals more than the way we decorate private ones. When I got back, I opened the notebook and began sketching. Not plans or business concepts, just lines, movement, flow. The shape of the house, the way the stairs curved, the way the shadows fell across the side wall at 4 p.m. It didn't need to be published or approved, it just needed to live somewhere, even if only in graphite. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Savannah came by again with soup in one hand and a roll of tape in the other. She smiled when she saw the wind chime still turning gently in the kitchen breeze. "I always knew you'd end up here," she said, not as flattery but as a fact spoken without expectation. We ate on the porch, legs tucked under us like we were kids again, watching the last of the daylight dissolve. The conversation wandered in and out, landing nowhere specific. That's the thing about healing. It doesn't always need words. And when the stars came out scattered and steady, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not peace, not pride, but presence. Complete, unedited presence. The kind that doesn't need approval or permission. The kind that says, simply, I am still here. The following weekend, the doorbell rang once. No knock. No second press. Just a single chime that echoed softly through the hall like an afterthought. I didn't check the camera. I already knew who it was. The silence outside had a shape to it, the kind that only forms when someone's rehearsed their words but still hasn't decided whether to speak them. I waited a moment, let the feeling pass, then opened the door without ceremony. Lauren stood on the porch, arms folded, no sunglasses, this time her expression too tight to be called sincere, but too tired to be cruel. She looked like someone who had run out of things to weaponize. She didn't say hello. She just looked past me into the living room as if to check what was still the same. I didn't offer to let her in. She didn't ask. The air between us held the weight of everything we'd left unsaid for years. Finally, she spoke. Mom wanted me to come. She thinks we should talk. I nodded once, not in agreement, just in acknowledgement. She could have called, I said. Lauren's jaw tensed for a second before she exhaled. She doesn't know what to say anymore. I didn't respond. Some truths don't need correcting. We stood there for another moment, neither of us moving. Then she reached into her bag and handed me a small box. Plain cardboard, no ribbon, no note. From her, she said you should have it. I didn't take it right away. I let it sit between us like a test neither of us studied for. Then I reached forward, slow, deliberate, and took the box with both hands. You want to know if I'm going to open it? I asked. She shook her head. I want to know if you're ever going to answer. I looked at her fully for the first time, and she looked older than I remembered. Not aged, just worn in the way people get when they realize they aren't the center of every story. I already did, I said quietly. Just not in the way you wanted. She nodded again slowly this time and stepped back. I'm leaving town tomorrow. Mom's staying with Aunt Ruth for a while. I don't think she'll reach out again, not unless you do. Her voice didn't carry threat or plea, just resignation. I nodded once more, and closed the door gently. No slam, no final word. Just a choice, not to continue the conversation in the same loop we'd repeated for a decade. Inside, I placed the box on the table and left it there for the rest of the afternoon. I swept the hallway, refolded the guest linens, replaced a bulb on the stairway landing. Only after the sun had dropped below the window line did I sit down and open it. Inside was a small frame worn at the edges with a photo I hadn't seen in years. It was from a birthday party I'd barely remembered, probably because I had spent most of it doing the cleanup. But in the photo, I was laughing, eyes closed, face turned toward Dad. He was mid-sentence, clearly saying something ridiculous. And Mom, standing behind us blurry in the background, had a hand on both our shoulders. I stared at the image for a long time, then slid the frame back into the box. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even the start of reconciliation. But it was something. A gesture, not an apology. Acknowledgement, not an invitation. Sometimes, people don't come back to say sorry. They just come back because silence finally lost its power. And sometimes that has to be enough. Later that night, I opened the guest room windows and let the wind come through. The chime over the sink caught the air and clinked once, then once more like it had learned my rhythm. I sat on the edge of the bed and wrote one sentence in my notebook. She stood at the door but left the rest behind. Then I closed the cover and went to sleep, knowing that the past hadn't disappeared, but it had finally stopped knocking. It's been 3 months since the court hearing too, since Lauren dropped off the box, and about 4 weeks since the last time anyone from the family tried to call. No more reporters, no more invitations, no more rumors quietly reshaping my name behind someone else's smile. The house is still standing quieter than it's ever been, but not empty. On weekends, I open the windows wide and let the sea wind braid itself into the curtains. During the week, I work remotely from the den. Dad once used the one where his maps still hang right where I rehung them after Lauren took them down. Some days I find small things tucked into drawers that tell stories no photo album ever could. A tiny screwdriver with his initials etched in faintly. A worn key wrapped in masking tape labeled for the gate no one uses. A note in his handwriting that simply read, "Katie, check the tide before planting anything permanent." I don't know if he meant it literally or not. That was always his way, folding advice into details that revealed their meaning slowly, like shells half buried in sand. I haven't changed the locks. I haven't repainted the walls or replaced the porch swing. I fix what needs fixing, tend what needs tending. The house doesn't need a makeover. It just needed someone to see it fully again, to see what it was instead of what it could be made to look like. I let friends visit, mostly the kind who know how to sit in silence and understand that healing is sometimes as simple as watching a storm roll in without feeling the need to name it. Savannah still drops by on Sundays with pastries and observations. She never asks about Lauren, neither do I. As for Mom, she hasn't written. I don't expect her to. I don't know if silence from her side is grief or pride, or maybe just habit. Some people carry shame like a scarf they never untie, thinking it protects them from the cold truth. I stopped waiting for a full sentence from her years ago, but if she ever chooses to speak again, I'll listen. I don't need the apology to be perfect. I just need it to be real. Sometimes people ask if it felt good taking the house back, if it gave me the closure I needed or the justice they believe I earned. And the truth is, I didn't take the house to win. I took it because it was the one place left that still remembered the version of me they had tried to rewrite. Not the difficult one, not the distant one. Just the daughter who stayed when it got hard, who held her ground without raising her voice, who showed up when it counted. The house never asked me to prove myself, it just waited. There's a kind of revenge that isn't loud or planned. It doesn't come with slammed doors or viral speeches. Sometimes it's as quiet as staying put, as steady as putting your name back where it was erased, as soft as not explaining yourself even when given the microphone. I didn't expose anyone. I didn't drag the story into public view. I just let the truth sit where it belonged, and gave it time to echo. The neighbors know I'm here now. They wave. They ask about the wind chime. Some of them remember Dad. One even dropped off an old photo he found in a storage bin of a beach cookout from years ago. I'm in the frame this time, off to the side, holding a plate and laughing. I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I forgot there were moments where I hadn't been forgotten. I printed the photo and placed it in the front hallway. Not to make a statement, but to make it whole. This house holds more than legacy. It holds proof of presence, of endurance, of how quiet belonging can be. I don't know what happens next. Maybe one day the family will come back around, not to reclaim the house, but to remember who we were when we weren't trying so hard to be seen. Until then, I'll keep the lights low, the door unlocked during the day, and the guest room ready. Not for forgiveness, not even for reconciliation, but for anyone willing to walk in without rewriting the story. And if no one ever does, that's fine too. I've already come home. And maybe that's a question worth leaving open. What does coming home mean, when the place you return to is the one they told you you'd never belong in again? What would you do if the family that erased you walked into the one place you never left?